Namaste. My name is Sujith Billa. I'm a public speaker, publisher, and a registered migration agent here in Australia. I'm with Lynda. Lynda, hello.
Hello.
Who are you?
Well, I'm the wife of Rod Stuart, and I live in Melbourne. I was born in Maroopna, which is in the Goulburn Valley, and grew up, I guess, until I was about 16 in Shepparton, once again a regional area. I do volunteer work, and I get to meet a lot of people from overseas, and I like asking them questions.
Oh, that's good. Regional area like regional Victoria,
Yes, that's right.
Shepparton. Yeah, I recently made a video on Shepparton. I went to Shepparton and I shot some footage in Shepparton and also in the regional park. It was beautiful.
Yes.
Some slow motion footage there.
And some very fast motion too. I saw you
Yeah.
driving very quickly past all those beautiful gum trees, and
Yeah, well, that was a time lapse.
thank goodness.
Yeah.
Because in Australia you're not meant to go over 100 or 110 kilometres an hour.
Yeah, no, I'm not a champion. I can't do that. So, we are talking about integration in this podcast when the nation is worried about big Australia or the media is worried about big Australia, and then they say the nation is worried about big Australia, or it's the politicians who say the nation is worried about big Australia, or is it the politicians that are worried about big Australia? We do not know, but this is a topic which is going on right now, which is about big Australia, which means we have more people in Australia than before, and the population is growing exponentially, especially in Melbourne and Sydney. And the citizenship minister has said that Australia doesn't have migrants integrated to the Australian society or community. Integration has been a big problem here. And why? We discuss that today in this podcast, and we try to get some solutions to this problem. We define the problem, then we talk about the problem, and then we try to get some solutions. So that's the agenda for this podcast. Lynda, are you okay with that?
Yes, that sounds an interesting topic. Quite a lot of suburban community houses that we have here do treat that as a priority to bring the neighbourhoods together, to integrate people from. We do have a lot of immigrants from different parts of Africa, Vietnam, all over really, India, and they come up with different ideas to help those people to mix with the locals, really, so that they can learn a lot about their own area and what's available to them and where's a good place to shop and all the rest of it.
So, how do you define integration?
Well, to integrate is to fit in.
Yeah.
It doesn't really mean when you integrate two things together, they don't have to both be exactly the same, of course, but it's a form of cooperating which helps, if you think of machinery, to keep the machinery moving, to keep something going, for it to work. To live outside of that integration, there's difficulties for the person trying to live outside the system, and for the people who are living in the system who have to put up with people who don't want to sort of fit in.
Yeah, so you're talking about working together as a team.
Yes.
But what work are you talking specifically?
Well, everything. See, I let a friend drive my car the other day, and he was from America, and the light was red and he turned left.
Oh.
I mean, this, You could have an accident.
You turn left on a red light.
Yes, yes.
Do they do that in their
Well,
country?
apparently it's all right in America.
Really?
You must
Come
look to
on,
the
you
right.
should be joking.
No, that was Cebu. Yeah, I mean, maybe they look to their right, and if there's nothing coming, they nick around the corner. But here in Australia, that's illegal.
So how is that integration? It's just following the rules.
Yes, that's right. Following the rules is quite important.
So following the rules is called integration, or
Well, it's
obeying the rules,
yeah,
obeying the law.
Obeying the law, but that is a very important part of integrating. You know, it's not just making friends with your Australian neighbours, it's living within the law.
So what you're saying is, if you make friends with your neighbors, doesn't mean integration. And just because you have friends from the local community, doesn't mean that you have integrated.
Not if you're not obeying any of our laws, because you'd soon be fined a lot. You wouldn't have much money, and you could end up in jail. You'd be integrating with a whole different lot of people in there.
But people are obeying the laws most of the time.
Yeah, most of the time they are. That's true.
So how do you say that the integration is only because of not following the law?
Oh, no, it's not really. Integrating is...
It's more than that.
Yes, it's getting to know not just Australians as such, but the other nationalities that come here as well.
Yeah.
It's because really it is multicultural in every way.
Yeah.
And, well, just mixing with different nationalities in the local community centre.
Yeah.
I've got to taste all different foods. It's amazing. Food brings people together.
Right.
And most people are quite proud to demonstrate their national dish. And as Australians, we're quite happy to eat it because it's usually better than what we eat.
Well, that's good. But let's take this example. We have a food festival going on, and we've got food trucks of different nationalities, all put side by side, but nobody talks to each other. So we've got 10 different food trucks with 10 varieties of food from different nationalities. You got the Turkish, you got the Vietnamese, you got the Thai, you got the Singapore, Malaysian, you got the Indian, you got the Pakistani, and you got the Afghanistani. And what else you got? You got the African. So you've got plenty of varieties here. There's no doubt about it. But what if they don't talk to each other?
Yes, well, that'd be a shame. I know myself, if I'm going to try some Indian food or Thai food, I'll say, "Is it hot?"
Yep.
Usually they'll say, "Oh, no," but sometimes they tell fibs. Sometimes...
Fibs?
Well, to them it's not hot, but to the Australian palate it can be agony. But you do tend to ask people, you know, what's in it? Is it hot? Is it very spicy? Whatever. That sort of conversation. I mean, you don't sort of go up to a stranger and say, how long have you been here? How many kids have you got? How much money do you earn?
Of course, you can't ask about
unless you
money.
want to marry them or something. But it's just current things. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, that's generally the topic you would talk to.
Yeah. So
about.
Sorry to interrupt you.
It's all right.
So go on.
Well, here in Australia, we would view someone who just starts talking to someone else that they don't know about something quite irrelevant or themselves as strange, really. You sort of got to have a common interest.
Yeah, so when you go to a person at a food truck, you just ask them, is it hot? And then if he says yes or no, that's it. The end of discussion. If it's not hot, you'll have it. and
Yes.
then pay the money and go away.
Oh, yeah,
So
but
where
if
is
it's
this
really good.
multiculturalism coming from?
Well, that's true, but I would tell my friends if it was really good food.
And then they will go do the same thing.
Yeah, and we
Ask
might say,
whether
oh,
it's
we
hot,
really
and then
enjoyed
they'll
the
eat.
food. Yeah, but I'm not going to invite them home for tea.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I
That's what
don't
I'm
know
getting
them
at. So
that
you
well.
don't invite them to your house, obviously, but
No.
you will not even make an attempt to meet them next time somewhere, and you will not make an attempt to have a dialogue at least for some time to learn about why they are here, what they are doing, and whether they are integrated.
Well, that's true.
So,
It
what is this
depends.
integration again?
Well,
That's a very
sometimes
hard
you can,
question to
it
answer,
is,
isn't
yeah,
it?
it's, you can't always just talk to someone, especially if they're working. You can't have a great in-depth conversation. But say if you go to one of these, they usually run by Chinese people, massage places they're all around Melbourne, at all
Yeah.
the big shopping centres. Now, someone's massaging your feet or your shoulders, whatever. Often they're young people, and you can say, "Are you studying?" And they could be studying nursing or
Yeah,
whatever.
that's a
And that's
frequently asked question. Even they ask me, "Are you studying?"
yeah, we do. Well, that's all we can think of to say. Yeah, so,
Well, I'm
but
studying life.
yeah, that's good. What have you learned?
Well,
You
I've
should
learned
write
a
it
few
down.
things, and it's never-ending story.
Yeah,
It's always
true.
something to learn.
Yeah, well, it's that's the sort of thing that we would start a conversation with a young person. With a very young person, like a child, you'd say, do you go to school or whatever. With mothers with children, they're easy to talk to. You admire how pretty, handsome the baby is, and they'll talk. They're the sort of things that Australians start conversations with. I don't know if other countries talk about really serious things right the first time you meet someone. Do you know?
Well, it depends on country to country and the changing political climate and also the job opportunities. There are several factors that affect. If it is an underdeveloped country and people are not used to talk to strangers, we should understand that they might not have a need to do that because they're just confined with what they are doing and content with what they are doing, and they don't want to make new friends and explore opportunities. Why we talk to strangers is when we talk to strangers is when we really want to learn something and you want to grow as a person.
Yes, that makes sense. It's
Yeah.
but with Australia being multicultural, I do find that, for instance, the Vietnamese do like to stay in their own community, and they often choose the same type of work. I mean, there are exceptions, of course. There can be Vietnamese surgeons and what have you, but they um, don't integrate a great deal. And if you have, 20 different nationalities that all want to stay separate,
Yeah.
it's you've limited the amount of people that you can talk to, the number of contacts that you can have, say when you're looking for work or want to find out which is the best school to go to or anything at all. If
Yeah.
you only talk to the people that of your own nationality who probably don't know everything about the area.
Yeah, true. That's one of the problems. But what is integration is not something we have still,
Still haven't.
we haven't come to a definition.
No.
Is it just the right fit? When you're talking about the fit, are you talking about a team that's assigned a work? And what work are you talking about?
Yeah.
Now, the migrants work in different jobs, and some of the jobs they work with the fellow Australians, not the fellow Australians, but the local Australians. And that's when obviously they have to integrate to finish that work as a team. There's no denying in that. Otherwise, they will lose their job. So they'll
Yes, that's
definitely
true.
integrate when they are at work. There's no doubt about that.
Yes, I think all
Yeah,
nationalities do
yeah,
that.
they do. That's a must. They don't have a choice. But what choice they have got is after work or after study. If there is a student, he comes running from his train station to his lecture hall, attends the lecture hall, and then goes back running to the train station, jumps on a train, and goes straight to work. He's that busy. He doesn't have time to talk to the local Australians or talk to the professor who is apparently Australian, who has an Australian accent. I'm using apparently because there are other
Yeah, the
professors as
national.
well.
Yeah.
But if they do this after work, they have a choice. After study, they have a choice. And they take the choice and they don't integrate. But why are they doing this? And when we are talking about they're running to their workplace, of course they are integrating there. But why does the citizenship minister or people say that Australia doesn't have this integration between the migrants and the locals? So where exactly are we not integrating?
Yes, we can't really make it a law that you have to. Well, I suppose we could, but it would be very strange. But um, when that
Yeah, we
student
will
finally
come to
gets their
that at the
job,
end
then
of this
they'll
podcast.
yes,
How
they'll
we can make it as a law.
yeah, we'll change the law. You have to integrate.
Yeah.
As a tourist, I was over in Thailand many years ago, and one of the fellow tourists, we were all told to go to the Buddhist temple, we would have to dress a certain respectful way,
Yeah.
which we all did, excepting for one lady. Now, when she was told, well, you can't come in unless you wear this scarf type of thing, she got very cross and didn't get to go into the temple.
Right.
So that sort of thing, when you're not deliberately not integrating, when you're taking your own values from your own upbringing into another country and deliberately not fitting in, it's very unpleasant for everyone. It was unpleasant for her. Her husband didn't get to go in either. We all felt embarrassed. That's the trouble if people deliberately don't integrate.
Sure. So we were talking about working together as a team at workplace and then the time after work or after study. So it's just about getting together with locals in parties or going for a barbecue and things like that to learn about Australian culture. For example, they learn few things about Australian culture. So what do they have to do? Do they have to adapt it to their culture and get a mixed culture and follow both customs of what where they come from and also the Australian traditional ways to do things? What customs are we talking about again? They have to follow.
Yes. Well, obviously, some customs that other countries have are totally intolerable to the Australian way of thinking. Um, let's see. Well, for instance, marrying children off when they're 11 or something, or if a husband dies, then the wife gets burned to death, and those sort of things are intolerable to
But they're
us, and
not
they're
allowed
against the
here
law. No,
anyways.
they're not allowed.
Yeah.
Um, but other traditions that people have, the way they dress or the way they worship,
Yeah.
Australians, I would say, generally are accepting of those things. So it's not a total transformation, to have to start wearing shorts and thongs and saying
Yeah.
"G'day, mate" to everyone. But
Yep. So integration is not definitely having an Australian accent.
no, but
It
it's
can't be.
nice if you can make yourself understood.
Yeah, we were focusing on that in our last podcast about
Yes.
Australian English. Yeah, but here the focus is about integration. So We
I
were,
think joining, it's hard to just throw yourself into something that you're not even interested in.
yeah,
So if there's something that you are interested in, it could be dance, music, art, public speaking, whatever it is, sport.
yeah,
If you do something like that in your own time, like weekends or whatever, so that you're not just going to work, school, going home to your family, that you're getting out and you're bound to be mixing with a mixture of people. I
right,
think it just broadens your horizons to mix with people,
yeah,
not just Australians who are born here, but we call 100 different nationalities Australians, so you're missing out if you just stick
yes,
with. Why come to a multicultural country if you only want to hang around with one nationality?
yeah. So you're saying just join Toastmasters
Yeah,
assembly.
join Toastmasters because we've got all sorts of nationalities
Yeah, we've
represented.
got different nationalities and we talk. That's our job. And it's all about talking. So if you can come and express yourself, you will know whether you have something that others can learn from, or you can learn what others are saying. And I would like to ask this question: what if on a very cold day, if I go out in shorts and wearing tongs, is it tongs or thongs?
Thongs with the TH, yeah.
Thongs.
That sounds hard for people to say.
Yeah, so if I do that, what would your reaction be? And would you say if I'm doing that, I'm not integrated to the Australian society?
Um, if you were going to
As
work,
long as I don't do it deliberately. I really didn't feel the cold and I just came out like that.
well, you could, yes. Australians dress in peculiar ways. Even in Australia, an Australian going to a different area has to sort of look around and see what the locals are wearing because they generally know the right thing to wear. Like up in Darwin, you will wear shorts, but you'll have socks, thick socks on, and heavy boots.
Hmm.
In Torquay, you will have shorts and thongs on, but on top you will have a warm jacket and a beanie. So you're sort of prepared for everything. And
Right.
it's the same anywhere in the world, I guess. You look at how the local people are dressing and dress in a similar fashion, unless you are having hot flushes or, you know,
Yeah.
if you've got a fever or something. But yeah, just we don't
Yeah.
have a uniform.
So what is the now we came to this conclusion that it's being fit, you know, being a right fit in the Australian community and understanding the Australian lifestyle so that the Australians will not have to think what's going on here and they don't have to make an effort to understand what's going on. Rather than you're telling the migrants to follow some of the things that Australians do and adapt yourself to the Australian lifestyle, you can still keep your culture, but keep it home. But when you come out, you have to follow the Australian culture, and that's the only way you can call it as integration. Can we
Yes,
say that?
yes, I think so.
Yeah,
It's awkward. A friend asked me who's a Muslim and wears the scarf and everything. She had applied for jobs with the photo. You send in a photo and she's wearing all of that, and she was not getting a job. And I said, well, have a photo taken without wearing that.
yeah,
Then when you get the job after 2 or 3 months, start wearing it again. Why not? I mean, because you've got to just get people to give you a chance. I think all nationalities can work well together.
yeah. Well, let's stop here about the definition part, because
Yes,
it's
it's
not
hard
an
to
easy
define.
answer to
No.
yeah, it's not an easy answer to define integration. You can't just type what is integration on the internet and
No,
get an answer. So we will
because it
leave
sort
it
of
for another
excludes
day.
people who are militant and troublemakers, you would say, but they're not integrated. Well,
Yeah,
they are
well,
generally speaking, but yeah.
always to keep it simple, just leave it to the politicians to define it for us.
Yeah, they can
They'll
make
come
up
up with
something.
something. Yeah.
That's-
Well, look, definitely there is no integration, regardless of what integration means. We can say that there are problems here in Australia. There is clear miscommunication between migrants and the locals. And who are locals is a different question again.
Yes,
That's a totally different
well,
question.
that's true.
And now the native English speakers, the Australian English speakers, have trouble speaking with migrants. There's no doubt about that.
Oh, we have no trouble speaking to them, we just can't understand them. They talk too fast.
Yeah, well, that's what you think. If you think that way, so you wouldn't want to talk to them, obviously, and
Well,
then
it's going to
you're not
be
talking to them.
exhausting, yes.
So there's this problem, and who's who's getting? How do I put this? Who's getting affected with this? Is it the migrants themselves because there's no communication or not enough communication, or is it the native Australians or
I've
the
seen,
Australian
I've,
community at large
yeah, I've seen
missing out
both
of?
get frustrated, really.
Yeah,
I suppose it depends on the Australian. Some are outspoken and say, oh, they should learn English before they come here, forgetting that we were born here and we learnt the language over the first 3 years of our life. But I've seen elderly people not know what to say at all because they have no English, and then it's a guessing game. So I
yeah,
wouldn't want to be on either side, really. You want to help someone, but they have no English,
yes,
and they're frustrated because you can't read their mind.
right.
It's just difficult.
Yeah, the English again is a bit controversial topic. They call it a silly language. And after all that, I would say that the way the government tests migrants in their English speaking skills or listening skills or reading skills or writing skills is by asking them to go for these bloody English language tests, so called IELTS or PTE. Okay, PTE is the Pearson test, IELTS is the Australian IDP business sponsored test. So it's called the International English Language Test System. So what these tests have are four modules: listening, writing, reading, and speaking. And it's a big surprise to me that people who score more in these tests qualify for visas. Obviously, that's good for them. But what's not good for them is they do not have enough conversational English, which is the most important thing. So they
Yes,
just can't have scripts to say what they want to say. And it's very hard for a person to go out to a stranger and ask where they have to go, and where can they find something, where can they find a train station, for example, or something else it could be. And how difficult would that be for that migrant to get a job here?
yes, well, if they can't make themselves understood at an interview, it would be very difficult, especially if their job involves talking to people. Um,
Yeah, even if it doesn't involve talking to people, they should at least have the conversational English to get the job first, to talk to the employer at least. And if you see these PTE and IELTS, when they write these exams, they're not tested in Australian English. They listen. They have got listening tests, and the listening tests are not just focused on Australian English. They're focused on general English. It could be British, it could be the American, it could be the Canadian, it could be
My,
the New Zealand, or it could be the Australian. Why go for a generic test? You have to be specific. And why can't you have a conversational English test instead of these tests, which do not really test your conversational skills?
yes, that's true, because even American sayings, there's quite a few differences really to the Australian English.
Yeah.
But I guess they think, well, they're all English and you could at least make yourself understood, even if you were learning English with an American accent or a New Zealand accent. Or
Yeah, but the way they are structured is not really helpful to them. For example, one of the exam asks you to, if you're a migrant, it asks you to describe an image. Why would you describe an image? When you have to come to Australia to talk to Australians, you should know how to make yourself understand to them and then understand them. You should know about the accent, the phrases that they use, and what they are talking about. What's the image has to do with this?
but it could be, you could be describing to someone, yeah, my farm's down the end of, 3 kilometres down the road, and it's got 2 big gum trees and a dead tree and a white picket fence. The grass is very dry, and there's some cows in the paddock. They're just descriptions of an area.
Yeah,
Or they might want to know, what's it like up in Northern Territory? Should I go up there to live? Well, it's 40 degrees and it's very humid. If you want to live in Tasmania, it's a lot colder. It snows sometimes up in the mountains. I mean, they're all descriptions. You must.
yeah, but this is exactly what you do in conversations. You talk about weather, you talk about your things. That's what I'm saying. So in these images, they're not talking about those things. It's a completely different thing. There is some data in that image which is totally irrelevant to what we do in normal life, and we describe that.
The
It's like you're
data.
getting ready to study something. It's like what the Labour Party called when there was discussion about English test for the citizenship eligibility. They called it as the university level English. So are we just concerned about what English the migrants, prospective migrants need to study a master's course here or a bachelor's course here, or are we concerned about the integration factor, what English they need to talk to Australians
Yeah, that
rather than
sounds.
just study? They already have studied bachelor's, let's say in India, most of the schools are English medium. They already studied their subjects in English. So why would you ask them to do a test to just study a master's degree? Ask them to do a test to speak to Australians, to be able to communicate in an effective way.
Yes, that's right. That's necessary.
Yeah.
Um,
So you,
as
you
well
should
as the
have different,
technical.
yes.
But
Yeah,
then
not
you'd
not the
have to.
technical. Just forget about the technical thing. They've already proven that. They've got degrees there. And most of them are equivalent to the Australian qualification framework bachelors. So why would you test them on those things? Describe image. What nonsense is that? And read aloud sentence, reading aloud. Are you going to read aloud something? Are you going to read a newspaper while
Allowed?
going
No,
to
it's not
work?
likely.
So you can practice that just for the pronunciation part.
But then, how would you test people's conversational English?
Just I would say just go for interviews. For example, the government appoints you to test
Just to have a chat.
prospective migrants. Yeah, just have a chat like we are having now, and you could give me points for what I spoke, whether I am being competent in what I said, whether I've been a competent speaker, or just in the chat you can show me a few things and say, look, this is an ad, what did you observe from this? That's called reading.
Mm.
It hardly takes 5 minutes. So you can finish all this thing in 1 hour. Just send an Australian to India and go for the tests, 1 hour each, 15 minutes for each module. And it doesn't have to be the monotonous way of reading, listening, writing, and speaking. You can have it in a creative way and see that whether this person in Australia will fit and whether this person can survive in Australia. If not, refer them to a course and then exactly focus on what he needs or she needs. Then if you do that course, then you'll get a visa, something like that. So the government itself is not putting enough efforts. It's very, very lazy. It's
Mm.
just going with few outdated exams like IELTS and PT and stuff like this, and they want them to come here and they blame them for not getting integrated.
Yes, and the
How
tests
can they
aren't
get
really.
integrated? They came here for a job or study. Obviously, they will be busy in doing those things. It's not an excuse, but that's what happening now, right now.
Yes, it would be good to just test people's conversational skills if they can make themselves
Yeah.
understood
Yes.
about a variety of different things.
Exactly.
Um,
And you teach them what conversational skills they should learn. You make videos, you make podcasts like this. You have the literature, put out in public domain. Ask them to learn that, and then they will know what to learn before coming here. Migrants are so adaptable that if you tell them you have to learn this, only then we will allow you here, they will learn that.
yes.
They will
Yeah.
definitely learn that. They have the patience to do that. They have the resources to that. They will be happy to pay money to do that. They are paying lump sum amounts to Australian universities, and that's one of the biggest export business Australia has is universities. We're selling master's degrees to overseas people, many of them from China and India.
Mm.
When they spend so much of money to get a master's degree, why wouldn't they pay money for the conversational English? You have to show them a way how to get that done. That should be in an organized way. So this is one of the solutions. But going back to the problems, what problems do you think they will have?
Living in Australia,
Yeah.
moving here, there's a lot of things, I guess, about Australia or the way we live that they don't know, and they, unfortunately, they probably don't know that they don't know.
Yeah, yeah, true.
So I think you've really got to mix with people who've lived here for a while um, to find out a lot of things, everything you want to do in life, where you want to live and where you want to work and what you want to study and where the local bus stops and which is a nice clean swimming pool and
Yeah.
where to go for dinner.
But can't they find this online?
They could,
They
but
they have got this PTV app now. If you're living in Victoria, you've got the Public Transport Victoria app, and now which is integrated with the Google Maps, so you don't have to go to PTV app separately. You can just type in the address in Google Maps. It will show you the nearest bus stop if
well,
you click
that's
on the public
true.
transport. Well, if you're talking about swimming pools, you can go to the local council website and see what pools are available there, or you can find online by putting your location there and find the nearest pools. Likewise, libraries and other stuff. But what exactly are they missing out? They're definitely missing out
Yes, like
few
the swimming
things.
pools, there's special ones for the Muslim ladies. A certain day they can go, just Muslim ladies. So they're not integrating with non-Muslims.
Right.
I don't know. It just seems.
Now I'm asking you, what is that they are missing out, And what is that they can't find on the internet
Oh, yes. Well,
if they don't integrate with the
that's
natives?
right. Well, they can't find someone they can trust to look after their house, feed the dog, water the garden when they go for a holiday back to their own country, or to maybe babysit for them. If their car's broken down, for the neighbour to give them a lift somewhere. Someone to watch out. Just, you know, we live here in Melbourne. It's good to have good neighbours. Good neighbours are worth a fortune, really, in what they can save you from being inconvenienced, robbed, locked out of your house, any of these things. Neighbours are, it's like an
So you're
extended
saying
family.
if they are close to their neighbors, that's good enough.
Oh, yes. Oh, well, no, but...
If you say that,
sorry, no,
what will happen is I will cite this example where they have suburbs living, full of one community living in the entire suburb, most of them. Now, if you go to ABS and type few suburbs names, you can see how the ethnicity is distributed in that suburb. And the new suburbs in Melbourne is over flooded with migrants, and they specifically target few suburbs. They're kind of living in a segregated society where their neighbors are from their background. And I think
Yes.
we have discussed this in the previous podcast.
Yeah.
So it's
Well,
important who your neighbor is.
Yeah,
You're talking about talking to
well,
neighbors.
yeah, I'm in an area where we've got a variety of nationalities, but I think some Australians might feel like a foreigner in their own country if they go into a suburb where they're the only white face, if everyone else is Muslim or Indian or Vietnamese. Then how many languages would we have to learn?
Would you really learn another language?
No, I mean, I wouldn't mind learning a bit of Spanish, but
Did you ever get scared that somehow the Australian accent will lose its the current form and it gets diluted and it comes as something else in future because of
well, it probably
multiculturalism?
will. I think it can only improve, really, because it's not a perfect accent. Some well-spoken English people, they're easier to understand.
Yeah.
And we do have a bit of variety because our country's big, the way people speak in Western Australia compared to Victoria and so on. There are some differences, but because we travel so much, the differences aren't too bad. I was speaking to someone from Nigeria the other day and wanted to know what their native language is called, and it's Udo or something, I forget now, but he said there's about 500 different languages, and you mightn't be able to speak to the person next door to you. Well, to my way of thinking, that's just absurd. How do you say
500.
to them, could you look after the kids while I'm gone for an hour to the doctor or something? They don't speak the same language.
So you're definitely not scared that the multiculturalism, and all the other languages that are spoken in Australia will corrupt the Australian English.
No, not too much.
Especially the
Languages are
accent.
always changing.
Yeah, but you don't think that the language of the Australian English will not change, or
it'll change, yes, it will.
It will change due to having many other languages in Australia, or it's just the locals are making it more complicated?
Yeah, young people speak differently. I think they listen to their person that they admire on TV or whatever and sort of try to copy them. So, yes, it's a constant change. But
you're never scared that multiculturalism will dilute the Australian English and
no, it doesn't
corrupt
worry
it.
me because
That's
it'll
good.
happen very slowly.
That's good that people are not thinking in these
No,
lines.
we
Otherwise,
don't
they will
know.
blame the migrants for this, that they're coming here to corrupt Australian English as well.
No, I think our
Not only.
biggest worry is that in some ways we could lose freedoms that we've
Yeah.
treasured
Okay.
because other nationalities have lived in cultures that are very strict, maybe
Right.
because they've got a huge population and they have to have stricter rules and you can go to jail for minor offences. So
So how do you
that would
lose your
be our biggest
freedoms
worry.
because of migrants staying here?
Eh, I guess to go into an area where very few people speak English, I would lose the freedom to be understood if they haven't, bothered to learn English. And I can't learn Vietnamese and French and 500 different dialects of African, and so
Yeah.
it really
They might have 500 or might not have, but let's assume if they have 500 varieties. Talking about any country, but why do you think 500 different variety of those languages would be in Australia? They might have those 500 in their country, but one from each variety might not be here.
Oh, well, that's true.
Yeah.
And the Aboriginal people had about 400 dialects, but they all learned some English.
Yeah.
So the thought of having that many varieties of a language,
And
half
talking
the
about,
people wouldn't.
sorry to interrupt you, talking about integration, how well were the Australians or the people who came from overseas, be it Britain or elsewhere, and who came in the fleets, first travelers, how well were they integrated with the Aborigines, the
Oh, they
indigenous
weren't. They
people?
killed them.
So they didn't integrate with
No, they
the
didn't
native
integrate.
Australians.
No, they didn't at
Yeah.
all. No, they expected them to integrate.
Right.
But
So
that was a different way of looking at a
yeah, that's a
different
total
culture. They
different
were thinking them
problem.
as
Yes.
uneducated and
Yes,
all the
yes.
rest of it.
That's the biggest problem this country has, is not recognizing them and then not giving them enough value and also not integrating with their culture. It's very easy to show them in few events and then say that we acknowledge the traditional.
Owners of the country,
Yeah,
but to integrate
but
with them
just
the way
saying
they
that
were
it's
then.
not enough.
But the cultures were just so different. I mean, the people who came here were convicts, or they might have been free people, poor people,
Yeah,
but they weren't nomadic, and some did, live with the Aboriginals, but very few. It's just such a vastly different culture.
right. So
And the Aboriginal people didn't integrate with the white people very well either, because
yeah,
the cultures were just so vastly different.
yes, yes. So were you scared to go to a particular place or a suburb where there's high density of migrants just because you think that you can't be yourself and you can't have the freedoms that you have in Australia because of the widely populated migrant?
Yeah, I wouldn't be happy to live like that all the time. I have been over to Hong Kong, to one of the outer areas, Yuan Long. There's no white people there at all. They're all Chinese. And I was there with a
But that's
friend.
in Hong Kong.
Yep, but out of Hong Kong. You go for quite a long journey on the train and you get to a very different part of
But why
China.
are we talking
But
about that now?
Yes, because I'm the foreigner. I'm the foreigner and I'm going into an area where there's no one speaking much English
Yeah,
and two white faces. Everyone else is Chinese. And they're staring at us from a distance. And then I asked someone who was a bit closer to this address, my Tai Chi master, and they're sort of looking around, feeling embarrassed, talking to us.
right.
Now, that was all right. We got the directions, And they're
Yeah.
very friendly and all the rest of it, but I wouldn't want to live like that, to be a foreigner
In
all the
your own
time,
country.
because I can't learn
But
many
but tell
languages.
us about Australia and tell us about Melbourne where you live. Did you ever get scared to go to a suburb which has
No,
high
no,
density
no,
of
no.
migrants?
Well, my auntie and uncle
Because you
lived in
said that
Footscray,
yeah,
which is a lot of Vietnamese and
right.
Chinese there now, and they were very old Australians, and they were used to having a lot of Australian people, and then gradually the Vietnamese came in, and they bring their family and their family and their cousins, and it eventually became mostly Vietnamese, and they got someone to do some cleaning through the council. Of course, they sent a Vietnamese lady. She couldn't understand them. They're too old to learn Vietnamese because they're in their 80s. It it was it's not as good as having someone come in who can say, "How are you? Did you have a good weekend? You know, how do you feel?" Anything like that, any conversation, no, nothing. The lady just does the cleaning and goes. That's not very satisfactory
So
for
what you're
anyone.
saying is sometimes there's a chance, or sometimes you felt it, like a foreigner in Australia as an Australian. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, yeah, you do, yeah,
Then that
especially in the markets, yeah. But
yeah.
that doesn't worry me, but
Well, look,
uh,
that's
I wouldn't
definitely
want it to be.
that's definitely a problem, and then there should be a solution. Talking about regional areas, how different is it to live in regional area for a migrant? Because now Sydney and Melbourne are becoming bigger and bigger. We are talking about big Australia, and we've got many problems in Melbourne and Sydney because of population. Obviously, we want many people to live in regional areas. And if you give migrants incentives to live in regional areas, they would obviously do that. All they want is job. Now, that's the job side of things. If you're talking about the integration with the local community in regional areas, do you think it's easy to integrate with people living in regional areas because they're not that busy like in Sydney and Melbourne and they have got more time to talk to migrants?
Yes, I think it would be easier because country people, out of necessity, um, are community people.
Yeah.
The men will belong to the CFA because, you know, bushfires and
What's
that.
CFA?
The Country Fire Authority, they'll be
Okay.
volunteers in that, and the Country Women's Association. There's a lot of things that country people need to do to help each other because there's more disasters and things, I suppose, you know.
Yep.
So that's the way they think. They are
Yeah.
community minded. Now, and a lot of country people are fourth, fifth generation Italian, Greek, whatever, anyway.
Yeah.
I think if people from overseas go to a country area, they are best to try to integrate in that, to join some of these volunteer things and get to know people, because that's the way those areas operate. Some people try very hard. They really, I read about one chap, he was doing gardening for people and they loved him so much, and he was meant to be sent back home, but they protested and everything because he really fit into the community and he was giving a lot to the community.
Yeah.
I'm not saying everyone has to go to that extreme, but I
Yeah.
think
Obviously, migration is not a zero-sum game. There's a give and a take. And now it's a big ask for migrants to give something. Obviously, they pay taxes when they are here, they work. But now it's a time for them to show that they can do something for Australia. Because there's been many people here, obviously. But it's the government that should take the initiative. They are always happy to give. They just don't know how to give and
How
what
to
to
go
give.
about it.
So you have to teach them right from day one what's expected. So before they come here, like I discussed before, you give them training for conversational English. You open up courses, Australian conversation English. Go for some universities or colleges open in India. They've already started education institutions in India, Australian education institutions. Why not put this course? And once they come here, show them incentive to live in regional areas. That's very important for Australia. So have some IT hubs. You don't have to have the same business that runs in the CBD in Melbourne and Sydney. You can just have a processing building, or the back office, some kind of thing, or let them do the back end work. You can get connected to the CBD offices. So you just have a team there in regional areas. All migrants wants is a job. They're happy to live in regional area because it will be very peaceful. If you can provide them with good education for their kids and employment, they're happy to live in regional area. And then obviously for the reasons you said, it will give chance for more integration.
Yes, I think there is more chance
Yeah.
really in country areas. And even Australians would think, say, if you go to a school or a church or anything at all, art gallery, it's been there for 50 years, 100 years, or been maintained, and so you don't just have a right to it. It's something you've sort of got for free, and I think we think that everyone should keep contributing to these things to keep them going.
Yeah.
Because it's not as if this generation's paid for these things. Other people have done this work, and the way of thinking is to keep working and volunteering, and then the next generation and so on, or else we'd have nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything can't be paid for by the government. Things have to be run by people. So that's, I think,
Yeah.
especially a way of thinking out in the country.
Yeah, but the people can only talk like we are doing right now in this podcast. They can't change the laws. It's the politicians who have to do it. And
Yes.
the government should come up with an initiative, put it in the public domain, take submissions, and then go for it. You have to teach them what to do before coming and after coming. Then it's going to be very simple. And many of the jobs are in regional areas as well. So, what jobs are only available in cities? You can ask migrants to come there, and what jobs are available in regional areas? You can grow them. Like in Shepparton, it's an industrial area. You can make it big. And what occupations are relevant to Shepparton's businesses? Have them in the skill list and promote Shepparton. And now there are very less number of visas issued because of several factors, and we do not know what the reason is. And now there's discussion of decreasing the planning levels for migration. So, for example, the 2016-17 and 17-18, the planning level is 190,000, which has different visa types again. You got the skilled independent, you got the regional sponsored, you got the work visas, and you got the family visas, you got the partner visas, so you got something else. So it's a mix of visas. It's a mixed bag, and it was 190,000. And Tony Abbott comes out and says you have to reduce it. Then Scott Morrison comes out and says, well, he worked under Tony Abbott and it was the same number then. Why would he reduce it now? And he says migrants contribute to the economy, which is true.
Yes, of
They just
course,
don't
yeah.
come here and watch
They work
TV.
and they buy things, and
Yeah.
yes.
They don't come here and sit back and relax, watch TV, and speak to their parents back home. Obviously, they have to pay the mobile phone bill, and they have to pay taxes. They work here, and obviously they are contributing to the economy. But because of this integration factor, because of not monitoring what a migrant is doing and how he is directly contributing to the Australian society in the border aspect, we're just getting confused what to do. So, what I'm saying is promote the regional areas, and that's one of the initiatives. Otherwise, just go for this Newton's law. So, this was what I said in the beginning of this podcast. I would refer to what law could be changed and what force can be applied for the government. One of the Newton's law says that every body or every object stays in the state of rest or motion until and unless an external force is acted upon it. So you have to put some force, and the force should come from the government. And what they could do is go for an integration camp.
Yes, sounds painful.
Yeah,
Like boot camp.
exactly. And this should be very strict. So it could be, I mean, I'm just brainstorming. It could be it could be the time they get down at the immigration area in the airports and take them straight to an integration camp. Put them there for 30 days. Okay, maybe give them a day off on Saturday and Sunday, or just one day a week. So for 30 days, 9 to 5, Australians come to teach them the Australian lifestyle. Now you tell me what could be taught to them.
Oh, a lot of things. For instance, the children will go to a primary school to start with. All schools, whether they're private or public, always need more money for equipment, computers, whatever. Now, the parents usually have a couple of ways of raising funds. So the mums might make cakes, biscuits and sell them at a stall. Sometimes the fathers all get together and build play equipment. And it's a good way of getting together and, someone plans what they'll build and they all bring things and they get together and they might have a barbecue after. Now imagine if they said, oh, we've got a lot of Nigerians go to this school, but none of those fathers come and help, or none of the mothers. Would you really want to be spoken about like that when you've got the chance to help your school that your children are going to and to mix with other people working together for a common cause?
Right.
So things like that.
So this is like an attitude issue.
Yes.
But I'm talking about what would you teach them about Australian lifestyle? Show them the lifestyle. How would you show them? I mean, this 30 days you could include picnics, could include barbecues, and going out and having theoretical and practical classes. So, what would be the structure if you were told to design this program?
Goodness, yeah. Because the Australian lifestyle can vary depending on how much money you've got. Whether your holidays are towing a caravan or you stay at a 5-star hotel.
Right, but you should focus on what you don't like in migrants and what integration part that you wanted to see in them so that you don't lose your freedoms. That's what you told
yes,
me before.
Parts I don't like. Well, obviously, if you had this integration camp, it would be quite ridiculous if every corner had a different nationality or not talking to each other. So we would have to get them together usually with a common purpose.
Yeah.
It could be preparing meals and sitting at the same table and talking.
Right.
And also the Australian way is men and women do talk together. They might go off into separate groups at some stage, women and men separately, but it's permissible for men and women to all talk together. So that sort of thing. What else? we could set up all sorts of things like pretend shops and
Wow, that's a good idea.
yeah, see how they normally do things. Like I know some countries are very heavily populated, and if you want to get served, you really got to be pushy, you know, use your elbow or your shoulder
Right.
and get in and push your way in. And if you don't do that, you'll miss out, and that's
So you'll
yeah.
teach
So
them
you
that as
just
well.
no, we don't teach them that. We teach them no. That's not the Australian way. We don't like people shoving in. I mean, we don't like being
Oh,
in
you're
queues for a
saying
long time, but we
you'll tell
like
them that
to.
this is not what you have to
No,
do.
you've got to, because no one's more important than someone else. We're all
Equal.
equal. So, if you're first there, you get served first. That's it. It's not
Right.
who's the strongest.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those sort of things people don't like. Yeah, don't like pushy people. What are the bad habits?
What do
Stuart?
you want to teach about barbecue?
Well, everyone brings something.
Yeah.
It's not. I don't know what the customs are in other countries. It might be that the host and hostess provide everything, but that's too much work for one family, and too much expense. So usually the
Right.
host family provide the meat and do the cooking, but other people bring a salad or a pavlova or some beer or whatever,
Okay.
and then we all share the meal.
Right. That's very important.
Well, because it gets people together more often. Otherwise, if you think, oh, I've got to cook for 20 people, you're not going to do it very often because it's too much work.
Yeah. Okay. What else could you think for the integration camps? I would
Well,
say we shouldn't allow their mobile phones to be used
yeah,
because
that's
they'll
right,
talk to
because
their
they'll only
parents and
talk.
report what's
That's a
going
good
on
idea.
here. It's
And
just like we have to follow what the politicians do.
yeah,
In the time of crisis, the politicians go for these camps when they want to become a prime minister or something.
that's right. And like the
And
Americans, Camp David.
oh, I didn't know about that.
Oh, yeah.
So what they do is if they want a post and they've got an opponent, they keep all their stock together and they give whatever they want. But here we are not giving them whatever they want. We are
No, they've
forcing
got
them to do some things. It's
yeah.
like it could be called like a jail, but they are getting something out of it.
Well,
And it should be
hopefully.
provided free of cost.
Yes, that would be nice. Yes.
Yeah. Because the government will benefit from this. You're making them integration ready, like the job ready programs. They are integration ready, and you give them a certificate called integrated
Yes, yeah.
with the
And a stamp on your forehead. Yeah.
with the immigration minister's signature.
Yeah,
Personally, they integrated. Now he's free to go anywhere in Australia and live there. Australians will
fully
not have any problem with this
with this
person.
person.
Yeah,
Well, that's a
integrated.
good idea. Well,
Well, really, you have to do something to come up
yeah.
with this idea how to get people integrated. You
Well,
can't just have this discussion, cut the migration numbers, and then leave it like that, and then again increase the numbers and say, look, we have cut the numbers because there was no integration. And when you increase the numbers, again, the problem remains the same.
yeah, you
Things
can't
will not
stop
change
people.
until and unless there is an external
Yeah,
force
we've got to learn
applied.
to integrate. And the children at this camp should be integrating too as well, even if they can't understand each other very well because they
Yeah.
haven't had the free lessons. But children learn quickly and they can make up games without a common language. They'll figure out how to play in the
Yeah, I
sandpit or
think children
whatever.
will not have
And that always
children
brings
will not have
parents
a problem.
together.
Yeah.
Children are good at integrating.
Yeah.
In Australia, sometimes there's trouble. We have Greek Cypriots. What is it? The Greeks and the Turks have fought a lot in their own country, and unfortunately, a lot of them live in sunshine, I think. And they can fight with each other because they always have in their own countries. But Australians always think if they want to keep fighting, they can go back, because we don't want you to bring prejudices here. That's the worst thing that can happen is to bring your prejudices here. No matter what you thought of another nationality, when you come here, it's best to start afresh and forget what happened in your own country, no matter how terrible it was, and think of this as a new place where we can try to live in peace.
Yeah.
Because people have left behind terrible situations, and really, a lot of them just want peace and, as you say, be able to work and raise a family and live happily.
Yeah, exactly. The skilled professionals, they want a better job, obviously, and they want better education for their children, and they want better health services as well. So these are some of the things that they come here for. Other
Yeah, we
than
all
the
want
good
the
weather, yeah, you all want the same, the locals, and you don't want those services to be degraded because of overpopulation.
No. Well,
So
they shouldn't be, because if they're skilled migrants, we should end up with more doctors and nurses, and
yeah,
if we keep the ratios correct.
yeah, you have to use their talents and then work on increasing infrastructure so that it meets the needs of all Australians. So just cutting a number, the planning level, just decreasing it and then increasing it and talking about it just before the elections is not good enough.
No, they shouldn't be playing with people's lives
Yeah.
just to get elected, but of course that's what politicians do.
Yes, the politicians do that, and politicians only work on some things when there's public reaction. For example, last year there was this public reaction on the citizenship changes, and because of that reaction, they had to go back on that, and the bill wasn't put in the Senate in first place. Thanks to Nick Xenophon, who is running in South Australia, and we will see what happens on 17th March. That is day after tomorrow.
St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, St. Patrick's Day, exactly. So Nick Xenophon was instrumental in seeing that the bill wasn't passed. But before that, there was public reaction. So the public put pressure on Nick. Nick put pressure on the government. And that's how every time there is something that the government does, even though it doesn't like it, it comes from the public. So there should be public discussion about what could we do and what could the government do to solve this problem of integration, rather than thinking that just because they are here we will have an integration issue, and just because you stop them we will not have an integration issue.
Yeah.
What about the people who are already here?
Yes,
So
that's
how do you
right.
fix the integration problem
Yeah,
of that?
that's
Now take them to integration camps.
it's a very simplistic idea, isn't it? Just
Yeah,
have less people come here
yeah,
instead of
that's just
looking for a
nonsense.
solution.
Yeah,
Well, yes, we
Well-
could learn a lot from children. They just do what they like and and get along with anyone. They don't really care very much.
yeah, there's a significant difference between the people who are born here and people who are born overseas and come here for work or study. Then they find this integration problem. So let's leave it at that. This broadcast did not come up with a solution to this problem, rather than brainstorm about the solutions, because this is not an easy solution, and I'm not somebody like a politician who sits in the Q&A and just gives a solution out of the blue. Oh, do this and that's fixed. That's it. Is that simple?
No.
This is a big problem, and I recognize it, and we have already spoken about this in our previous podcasts about integration, segregation, Australian English, even before this came in the national newspapers and the national electronic media. And now the migrants are in a bit of shock. What's going on here? The fact remains that this is a frequently uh, asked question about what would the migration, what would the migrants do to the country rather than the country do for migrants. This is what somebody asked us in our club last
Yes.
time, and
That was an American quote, wasn't it? Don't
yeah,
ask what the
yes,
our country can do for you, but what you can do for our country. But I think that was in times of war too. But
yeah, you have to show the migrants what to do. They will do
yes,
it.
yeah,
That's
that's
as
right.
simple as that.
Yeah, it's not just
Yeah,
work and pay your taxes. There's a lot of volunteer things to become part of the
yeah. If you force
community.
them to do volunteer work, they would obviously do it.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
forcing's it's an attitude. It's seeing the people as a whole. You know that it's something that benefits everyone.
yeah.
It's a way of
So
looking
the
at
part of
life, I
integration
suppose.
camp, you can say, well, look, you have to learn few things, and you only learn few things if you do them, and you don't do them unless you are asked to do so.
Yeah, that's
They
right.
wouldn't do so
Well,
things.
say if we think, okay, there's the camp and they sleep in those bungalows. Okay, we set fire to the camp. Okay, one person can't put it out, or the 5 Australians can't
Yeah,
put out the fire. Everyone has to get there
yeah, and
with
they have
hoses and
to have
buckets,
the
and they all
exposure to
have
do
to
it
do it.
first.
Yes,
Yeah,
and that's I guess that's an Australian way of thinking.
yeah, that's the mateship you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, that everyone gets in because otherwise we'll all suffer.
So that brings to the end of this podcast. As I said before, this podcast is not to get a solution for this problem, rather than explain the problem and point out to the politicians that is your problem, because you have brought migrants here. It's not the migrants who came here just by themselves, and it's your job to look after the migrants as well as the locals, and to see that there is integration. And just cutting the migration numbers is not an
Not
answer.
the answer, no.
Integration is the answer. And go for integration camps if you like. Go for English camps if you like. So you have one camp in India, one camp in Australia, if you're talking about Indians coming to Australia. In the general skill migration, the top contributor is India. And most of them are professionals. But if they are not integrating, that's the government's mistake. It's not the migrants' mistake. Well, we talked about what the migrants could do in the previous podcast, but in this podcast, we're focusing on the politicians more.
Yes. Yes, they should be involved.
So, Lynda, you have something to say before we finish?
Yeah, I'd like to see all nationalities integrating more. I think it's just beneficial to everyone. Yeah. I mean, why come to a multicultural country if you have no interest in other cultures? I mean, it's a big plus, really. Our country wouldn't exist if we didn't have immigrants.
Yeah, this is an immigration nation.
It is, yes.
It should be an integrated immigration
yes,
nation.
it should. That would be ideal. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe this is what we should call our podcast as integrated immigration nation.
Yes.
How does that sound?
That sounds terrific.
Wow, we got a name for the podcast now. On that note, we'll finish this podcast. My name is Sujith Billa. I'm a public speaker, publisher, and a registered migration agent in Australia, passionate to assist skilled professionals to come to Australia and to take this nation forward. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Please subscribe to my channel Sujith Talks on YouTube to get more of this kind of content. This kind of content.
Yes.
I was looking
Thank
at
you.
you.
Well, it saves me travelling all around the world if everyone comes here.